Haven't you heard? The Calgary Flames. We won the Stanley Cup. Yeah. Oh yes. This is sweet. I'll explain what I mean here as we did win this thing called the Stanley Cup. Second in franchise history when it comes to some simulations here. And I find it very interesting that there was a couple simulations on a couple sources that I follow that we won the Stanley Cup in 2020 here. Now, it would still make this a bad year given how 2020 has treated us. But it wouldn't be as bad here. But it's just something very, very interesting to think about. And who knows? Maybe NHL 20 knows something that maybe we have what it takes to win the Stanley Cup. It's time to buy a second one of these, maybe. But let me explain in these couple sources here, and I'll put the links in the description below here, because there were three scenarios that I follow that we won the Stanley Cup with different paths to get there, and it definitely would be sweet if it actually happened, although under unconventional circumstances this year. But let's take a look here. They first started off with CBS Sports as they run a simulation, and this article originally was published on April 16th, 2020. So they simulated the playoffs when it was supposed to start until, all this COVID-19 stuff happened and social distancing and things being canceled or paused. And here we are in the middle of June when traditionally Stanley comes out of the box, gets hoisted. We are still in the early stages of maybe getting back, where I don't think Stanley, if it does come out, will get hoisted and come out of the box, at least till late September, early October here. But the headline says, NHL 20 Stanley Cup Playoffs Simulation. Flames win first cup since 1989 as Bruins fall short again. So, sorry Bruins fans, but I think the Bruins are in some way are also used to being on the wrong end of the Stanley Cup, because I think the Bruins and Flyers, and that'll be another team that I'll shortly talk about in this video, another team that tends to be on the wrong end of the Stanley Cup Finals, where they're watching Stanley being hoisted by the other team, whoever they happen to play here. So, as I said, this was just a simulation that many news article agencies post out here, and CBS Sports figured it was fun to do it, given what's happened here. So how they seeded the teams in this scenario here is they based everything on points percentage based on the pause here. So the Columbus Blue Jackets and Winnipeg Jets were not in this playoffs on CBS Sports here. So this is how the virtual playoff picture shake down. So if you go out east, the Boston Bruins were the #1 Atlantic team, and they were deemed the President's Cup champions for the best regular season the best record in the regular season, as now the 2019-20 regular season has been canceled here. They would draw the New York Islanders, the second wild card here, and the Tampa Bay Lightning would draw the Toronto Maple Leafs, as Tampa Bay was second in the Atlantic and Toronto was third in the Atlantic here. And then on the Metro side of the bracket here, the Washington Capitals, first in the Metro, they would take on the Carolina Hurricanes again in the first round for the second straight season, as they were the first wildcard team. And then the 2-3 would have been the Battle of Pennsylvania, where you had the Philadelphia Flyers hosting the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that's the eastern side of the bracket here. On the western side here, the St. Louis Blues, they were the top team in the West and in the Central Division here. They would take on the Calgary Flames if you based it on points percentage, as we would have the second wild card here. And then the 2-3 in the Central would have had the Colorado Avalanche hosting the Dallas Stars here. And then on the Pacific bracket here, you would have the Vegas Golden Knights. They were first in the Pacific. They would take on the first wild card in the Nashville Predators. And the 2-3 for the Pacific, you would have the Edmonton Oilers hosting the Vancouver Canucks. So that's how the bracket played out. or how it was seeded, based on, if you based it on points percentage, and this is what CBS Sports put in here. So let's take a look at how the series went out. Well, it started off with Leafs knocked out in the first round again, as the Toronto Maple Leafs would not get past the Tampa Bay Lightning in the simulation here. I know that's, I don't know if that would make it any easier for Leaf Nation here, but at least they're not being whooped by the Bruins here. And as I said in the highlight, we took care of the Bruins at the end of the day. And then it says Avs, Golden Knights out the whimper in the first round here. And then Edmonton goes on to run to the Western Conference Final with McDavid. That's what some thinking, that the Edmonton Oilers are due to take the next step here. And in this scenario here, Battle of Alberta in the Western Conference Final here. That would have been sweet if it actually happened here. Finally have a Calgary-Edmonton battle in the third round here. And appropriately, we probably should have had a Calgary-Edmonton third round if you go back in the 80s here, if we had a different format here. And then it also mentions here that Bruins and Flyers rallied back from 3-1 deficits in the first round, and they actually happened to meet in the Eastern Conference Final. That's the highlights that CBS Sports talks about in each round here. So this is how each series went. So in the first round, you had the Boston Bruins defeated the New York Islanders 4-3 here, and this was one of the series that Boston came back from 3-1 deficit here. And then you had the Tampa Bay Lightning defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-2 here. And then the Carolina Hurricanes, once again, defeat the Washington Capitals in 7 4-3. It doesn't say anything about a double overtime thrilling Game 7 victory. And then the Battle of Pennsylvania would say she lives up to the hype, as the Philadelphia Flyers defeat the Pittsburgh Penguins in 7 4-3 here. And then it mentions that one factor was, well, the Flyers came back from 3-1 deficit, and that Sidney Crosby only had one goal in the series, so that probably could have been an issue if this was in real life here. So that's how the first round played out on the east side. And on the west side here, the Calgary Flames, we pull off the upset and actually defeat the St. Louis Blues in 6 here. So in this, we would have finished off the defending Cup champions in front of the Sea of Red here, who were, because it's mentioned that both games that the St. Louis Blues lost 2 of those games in overtime here. So that definitely helped the Colorado Avalanche last year when we drew them. So we knock out the defending champs in the first round 4-2 here. And then it mentions here these Dallas Stars. They sweep the Colorado Avalanche 4 straight here. And then here's another upset. The Nashville Predators defeat the Vegas Golden Knights in 5 4-1 here. And the Edmonton Oilers, although you might think it will probably be a much closer series here, actually the Oilers defeat the Canucks 4-1 in the first round here. So that's how the first round handout in the CBC simulation here. Second round here, you would have Boston playing Tampa Bay, and the Bruins actually, after having to come back against New York Islanders in the first round, they defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-1 here. I don't know if you could really say that's an upset. It's 2 powerhouse teams here, but I know this would be another disappointing exit for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't feel too bad about the Tampa Bay Lightning since June 2004 here, but that's what happened here. And then the Edmonton Oilers, actually after beating the Vancouver Canucks in 5 here, they sweep the Nashville Predators 4-0 here. And definitely mention that Mikko Koskinen had a .938 save percentage here. And then the Calgary Flames, after we knocked off the St. Louis Blues in the first round here, says we would actually outscored the Dallas Stars, and we beat them 4-1 in the second round here. And it actually mentions here through 2 rounds, Johnny Gaudreau was making up for lack of production from last year. It says that he leads the Flames with 5 points and 5 assists in 11 games here. So if this actually happened here, Johnny Gaudreau would definitely take there'll be some heat taken off of him. And then the last series here, you had the Philadelphia Flyers defeated the Carolina Hurricanes 4-2 here. So then that sets up the Final Four, where you have Boston and Philadelphia and Calgary and Edmonton here. And definitely would have been sweet if that actually happened for the west side here. And as I mentioned at the beginning here, it was Boston and Calgary that went in the Stanley Cup Final here. Well, the Boston Bruins, they defeated the Philadelphia Flyers 4-1 to get back to the Stanley Cup Final for the second straight season here. It mentions that the Flyers did start off the series with a 6-2 win here, and then Boston wins the next 4 here. And then the Flames defeat the Oilers. Go Flames, 4-2 here. Doesn't mention anything about any fluky goals, Steve Shoot Smith, any moment like that. But Edmonton was able to not get any more half goaltending here. And it said here that Connor McDavid only had 4 points and Leon Draisaitl only had 5 points in this series here. So our top-notch star D contain those two. That's definitely been quite a task here. So that sets up a Flames-Bruins Stanley Cup Final here. First time ever that the Flames and Bruins would have met in the Stanley Cup Final here. As you recall here, the Flames have only played in the finals 3 times, twice against the Habs and once against the Lightning here. So it mentions here Game 1, Boston get draws first blood as they win 3-1 here in this simulation here. Although we outshot the Boston Bruins 36-28 here. And it mentions Krug, Coyle, and DeBrusk score for the Bruins here. And then Game 2, the Flames tied up here. Actually was 5-4 in overtime here, as both teams made 40 shots here. Flames carried a 4-3 lead going into the final minute of the third period, but it was David Pastrnak that ties it up here. But Andrew Mangiapane scores the overtime winner in this one. So we have a tie series going home in the Sea of Red here, and I'm going to say that's definitely the best case scenario you can get here. So then Game 3, actually the Calgary Flames definitely won this one, as they won this one 4-2 here to take a 2-1 series lead at home here after coming back from a 2-1, 2-0 deficit here. And it was Derek Ryan who came back with a goal big in the third period, and then Johnny Gaudreau put it away in the empty net here. So Calgary's up 2-1 here. But Game 4 here, Boston had a dominating first period, and they came up to a 2-0 lead again, and they able to hang on here. So Daniel Chara got a goal in this one. And Boston ties this up at 2-2, so it's tied at 2 going to Boston. And then Game 5 here, Calgary was able to take one in Boston here with a 4-2 victory here with a 3-2 series lead here. Mentions here Matthew Tkachuk, Mr. Clutch here. However, he broke the tie early in the third period. Usually he likes to score late here, but it was 18 seconds in, and then Calgary was able to hold on and put an empty net here. So Calgary's up 3-2, going home in front of Sea Red to potentially bring home the Stanley Cup. We were in that position in 2004. But unlike 2004, the Calgary Flames did actually close out the deal and win the Stanley Cup here, as the Calgary Flames win Game 6, 3-1 here, as the Calgary Flames had an early 1-0 lead here. As I recall, when we were playing the Tampa Bay Lightning here in those 2 elimination games, the Flames never had a lead. Another game here, but in the simulation, we took a lead here, and we were also shot the Bruins 40-26 here, and then Mark Dankowski also scored a goal here, and Tkachuk, Mr. Clutch, put it away with an empty netter here. So the Calgary Flames win the Stanley Cup according to the CBS Sports simulation here, 4-2 here, as Calgary captures the second Stanley Cup in franchise history, the first since 1989. Johnny Gaudreau wins the Conn Smythe Trophy of the playoffs. He had 23 goal points, 13 goals, 10 assists in 23 games, and only Patrice Bergeron wound up being the leading scorer in the playoffs in the simulation here. He had 12 goals, 12 assists, or 24 points here, as the Boston Bruins, for the second straight season, were on the wrong end of the Stanley Cup Final here, and Boston definitely, I'm going to probably say after this, will not want to play any more Alberta teams in the Stanley Cup Final here, because in 1988 and 1990 here, the Boston Bruins played the Edmonton Oilers twice for the Stanley Cup, and they were on the wrong end of that. The last one was Wayne Gretzky, and then in 1990, it was Mark Messier that led the way, and had stellar goaltending by Bill Ranford here. So that's one simulation where we won the Stanley Cup. The Calgary Flames defeated the Boston Bruins 4-2 here, and we won it at home in front of the Sea of Red here. So that was the first simulation here. So that's definitely interesting here. So the second one here, well, the one YouTuber I always mention in many of my videos that inspired me to be more active on here is the Hockey Guy. And what the Hockey Guy does is that he has done some live streams. And I think he does it on Wednesdays and Saturdays here, so you can check out the hockey guy on here, what he did in the his live streams here is he did simulate the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs, and he just, has the game on computer, and that's what CBS Sports also did. They just run it on computer and let it play out, and we won the cup. Well, it happened again. The Calgary Flames win the Stanley Cup under the hockey guys' live streams here, but the numbers here definitely look a little more interesting that if this actually happened. Some of the players that I'm going to highlight here, if they actually produced that in the playoffs, they'd probably still take some heat, even if we did bring Stanley home here. But what the hockey guy did in his seeding here is I think he based it on where the teams were at the pause here. So Vancouver did not make the playoffs here. So how he had it here is you had Carolina playing Washington, and then you had Philadelphia playing Pittsburgh, and then you had Columbus playing Boston, and Tampa Bay playing Toronto here. That was the east side of the bracket here. And then on the west side, you had St. Louis playing Nashville here. And then you had Calgary playing Edmonton in the first round here. This is based on the standings at the pause here. Then you had Dallas playing Colorado, and you had Winnipeg playing Vegas here. So that's how the seedings worked here. So how the first round went in his live stream simulation here is that you had Carolina beat Washington 4-3. Gee, I think Washington doesn't like Carolina here with these couple simulations here. And this one you had Philadelphia beating Pittsburgh 4-3. In the Bell, Pennsylvania, I think if you were to take both Pennsylvania teams today, they would need all 7 games, just like if we had Calgary Edmonton here. However, here, there's an upset. You had Columbus beating Boston, also in 7 games, 4-3. And then Toronto Maple Leafs, I got some good news for you. The Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-1 here. Yeah, damn you, Tampa Bay Lightning. So there's some Canadian team that moves on here. And then on the west side of the bracket here, the first round, you had St. Louis beating Nashville 4-2 here. Calgary beat Edmonton 4-2 here. And then you had Dallas beat Colorado 4-1, and Winnipeg taking out Vegas 4-3 here. So that's how the first round went on the hockey guy. You can watch the live streams he has in his backlog here. So in the second round here, well, you had Philadelphia playing Carolina, and Columbus beating Toronto. And then on the west side, you have Calgary playing St. Louis, and Dallas playing Winnipeg here. So how the second round went on his simulation here is the Philadelphia Flyers beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-3 here. And then the Columbus Blue Jackets sweep the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-0. And then the Calgary Flames, we took out the St. Louis Blues in 7 games here, just like we did in 1986 playing the Conference Championships. And then the Dallas Stars edged out Winnipeg 4-3 here. So now the Final Four, you have Philadelphia, Columbus, Calgary, Dallas here. And how the conference finals worked out is the Philadelphia Flyers actually swept the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-0, and the Calgary Flames, we took out the Dallas Stars 4-2 here. So that sets up a Calgary-Philadelphia Stanley Cup final here. And actually, this would not be the first time that the Calgary Flames have played the Philadelphia Flyers in the playoffs here, because if you recall, the first year that the Calgary Flames, after they moved from Atlanta here, we actually drew the Philadelphia Flyers. They did the 1-16 format for seeding here, and the Calgary Flames played the Philadelphia Flyers in the second round of the playoffs that year, and that also takes 7 games, and got very physical here. Well, in the Stanley Cup Finals here, we needed all 7 games, and the Calgary Flames actually beat the Philadelphia Flyers 4-3 in the hockey guys simulated playoffs here. Keep a note here, though, that the Calgary Flames actually had a 3-2-1 lead in Game 5 there, and Philadelphia pushed it to Game 7 here. But the Calgary Flames won the Stanley Cup in the hockey guys live stream here. David Rittich won the Conn Smythe Trophy here. Now, this is where it gets very interesting here is, look at the lead scorers here. I think if this actually happened, despite winning the Stanley Cup here, I almost think we probably wouldn't win the Stanley Cup if these were the actual numbers here. But some players would definitely take some heat here, because the Calgary Flames leading scorer in the hockey guys live simulation here, and we played 26 games, while the Philadelphia Flyers have played 25 games. Elias Lindholm led the way with 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points here. All right, Calgary won Game 7, 3-1 here. Johnny Gaudreau, I think he would still definitely take some heat if this actually was playoff protection despite winning the Stanley Cup here. He was second to team scoring with 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points in 26 games here. And then he has Andrew Mangiapane with 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points here. I could say he probably stepped up his game a little more here. Sean Monahan, 9 goals, 4 assists, 13 points here. You probably think you would expect a little more production from our top line here if we were to win the Stanley Cup. And then he had Michael Backlund. He had 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points here. That sounds about right here. But Matthew Tkachuk, 2 goals, 9 assists for 11 points here. I know this is all video game simulation, but if we won the Stanley Cup and this actually happened, some players would still take some heat here. And David Rittich's numbers. He was 16-10 with a 1.78 goals against average and a 914 save percentage and 1 shutout here. So that's just the leading scorers note on the Hockey Guys stream there. So you can watch the stream and see his number here. And then on the Philadelphia Flyers side of the puck here, it was Claude Giroux who led the playoffs in scoring here. He had 10 goals, 17 assists for 27 points, and they played 25 games in their playoff run here. Then Travis Konecny had 10 goals, 13 assists for 23 points. And then Jacob Voracek, he had 7 goals, 15 assists for 22 points. And then Sean Couturier had 8 goals, 11 assists for 19 points. And then you have Scott Laughton with 8 goals, 8 assists for 16 points. And Kevin Hayes, 6 goals, 10 assists for 16 points here. I almost expect those numbers to be more for the Calgary Flames with our top leading scorers, dealing a point a game, if we were to win the Stanley Cup. And then Carter Hart, he was 15-10. He had a 2.15, 2.15 goals against average, a 907 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. So that was the Hockey Guys simulation here. I just captured the highlights here. So there was one more source here that we won the Stanley Cup here, is this blogger called Matchsticks and Gasoline here. I know that what they did was they simulated the season after the pause here as per the schedule on the dates here. So this is all part of the Sports Page Nation there. Matchsticks and Gasoline here, and the headline says NHL Playoffs Sim Stanley Cup Finals Game 7 mission complete. So Calgary won the Stanley Cup in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals when it comes to Matchsticks and Gasoline here. And before we go break down the game and the playoffs here, it starts off that I'm not too sure how it works in the NHL 20 year, but the Calgary Flames actually needed to win 17 games to win the Stanley Cup here, because it mentions that Calgary went 17-8. It took us 25 games. And I think what it was is that I think there's an option where, there's proposals that maybe there'll be a play-in game for the wild cards here. Well, in the simulated run here, the Calgary Flames had to beat the Arizona Coyotes in a playoff game, play-in playoff game to get into the playoffs here. So the Calgary Flames did defeat the Arizona Coyotes. And then we drew the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round. And then I think we finished them off in 7 in that simulation here. And then we had the St. Louis Blues in the second round here. If I recall, we finished them off in 6 here. And then we played the Colorado Avalanche in the third round here, where we got some sweet revenge on them. I think we finished them off in 5 and 6 games, if I recall here. And then we played the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals here. And as I mentioned, we won the Stanley Cup in 7 games over the Boston Bruins here. That'd definitely be tough for Bruins fans, especially they were on the wrong end of the Stanley Cup Final last year against the St. Louis Blues here, and they lost it at home here. And the Boston Bruins, definitely up there with the Philadelphia Flyers, definitely have been on the wrong end of the Stanley Cup Finals the most here. So when it comes to the leading goal scorer here, well, Brad Marchand led the way for the Bruins with 13 goals. Sean Monahan led with 15 here. Something, you would expect if we were to ever win the Stanley Cup here. When it comes to assists here, as Patrice Bergeron led the way with Bruins with 18. Michael Backlund with 16. Both, similar two-way forwards here, facing off against each other. Then when it comes to points here, Patrice Bergeron had 24, while Sean Monahan had 28 here. And then when it comes to the goaltending here, you got Tuukka Rask. He was 14-9 with a .262 goals against average, 918 save percentage, and 2 shutouts here. And then David Rittich here, he was 17-7 here. He had a .275 goals against average and a .921 save percentage and 2 shutouts here. And then I'll just give a summary here for the Game 7 here, that the Calgary Flames did clinch the Stanley Cup in the Matchsticks and Gasoline simulation here, and they also have a YouTube channel where you can watch those live streams here. But the Calgary Flames won that game 5-2 in Game 7 here. It was Brody that scored the opening goal in the first period at 14-12 here from Gustafsson and Bennett here. It mentions Gustafsson had 12 assists, Sam Bennett had 8 assists there. And then Austin Czarnik, who actually played a role in this playoffs here in the second period here, he actually has his 7th goal there with Sam Bennett and Eric Gustafsson here at 6:46. And then Andrew Mangiapane at 13:53. He got his 13th goal of the playoffs here. Tkachuk with 6 assists. Dubé with 7 assists there. And then in the third period here, Calgary took a 5-0 lead here. 5-0 lead here. This is still, in the third period here, that Michael Backlund got his 6th goal by Gaudreau. And then Bruins got Nordstrom with a goal from Richie McAvoy, and Lampus Lindholm and Nordstrom with the assist there. So Calgary won the Stanley Cup in Game 7 with a 5-2 victory here. This is based on their blog here, and I'll put it in the description here. But yeah, definitely very interesting to think that you got the CBS Sports, the Hockey Guy, and Matchsticks Gasoline all simulated the Calgary Flames to win the Stanley Cup here. I know that Sean Monahan was the Conn Smythe winner with the 15 goals and 28 points, who led the NHL in scoring there. If this actually happened, 15 goals falls second all-time in Flames playoff history to Joey Mullen, because Joey Mullen, who led the Flames in scoring in the regular season, he scored 16 goals in 1989, the year when we actually won the Stanley Cup, and 28 points have been second in franchise history as Al MacInnis, who won the Conn Smythe Trophy in 1989, led the Flames in scoring. He had 31 points in 1989 as a defenseman here. So yeah, definitely something to at least fantasize here and maybe give some hope here that NHL 20, do they see something in the Calgary Flames that whenever we get back into playing hockey here, that, well, we have what it takes to win a Stanley Cup? I mean, as long as we're in the playoffs here, anyone has a chance here. And given these unique circumstances here, I still think we're maybe 6 to 8 weeks away from actually playing games here. And if it's going to take, 2 months to get through the entire playoffs here, Stanley's not going to get awarded until the end of September or early October here, which I always have to say, the Stanley Cup is the most impressive championship trophy in sports here. This is my, obviously, replica, and it says 1989 here. I debate there should be a second one in my hand here for 2004 there. Oh man, we got so close there. But at least my team has at least won one here. But according to those 3 simulations here, we're going to win the Stanley Cup in 2020. So Mark Giordano could be doing this here. I'm not sure if there'll be a lot of kissing given what's been going on with the global pandemic here, but I would say if or when we win the Stanley Cup, obviously Mark Giordano will get it first as captain here. My guess would be the next Flames that will get it passed off to would be Michael Backlund, because he's also the longest serving Flame, and then TJ Brody. Those would be my first 2 picks, and who I think Stanley would get passed off to after when Mark Giordano gets it here. I could throw that in the video here, but what do you think? Which run would you say would have been your favorite one? Would have been the CBS Sports, the Hockey Guys live stream, or the Matchsticks and Gasoline here? The Matchsticks and Gasoline actually kind of almost puts in that play-in round here, and if we were to bring this home, and let's say, I'd actually have mixed feelings. I mean, yeah, it'd be great, it'd be awesome if we win the Stanley Cup here. However, it's just the circumstances here, and hopefully, if indeed we do win the Stanley Cup, and the fact that I'm old enough to actually appreciate it here, because I was a little young to fully appreciate it back in 1989 here. as I was in grade 1 here, late grade 1. I do remember putting in a daily journal that we won the Stanley Cup here, but I know it was a time when, you got to go to bed early, and I was upset when Dad woke me up, but as the story goes here, but, I was, 6 turning 7 at the time here, and, I was too young to fully appreciate it. I was also learning at the time thinking, why are these men crying? They I mean, I'll definitely would be shedding tears if indeed it happened, but all I hope is that if we do win it, I would be able to, go to City Hall or to gather to celebrate this and see this trophy. And, it's been actually 16 years since I saw the thing live in person. Because I remember back in 2004, memory here that they had the Stanley Cup tour of the Final Four cities at the time. And at that time, you had the Calgary, where we were going to play the San Jose Sharks. And then it was the Philadelphia Flyers playing the Tampa Bay Lightning here. And I remember they put it at the Stanley Cup was on display at the Sport Check in Sunridge Mall there, and I waited an hour in lineup before I came there, and I remember seeing them carrying it in. I was getting goosebumps here, and I did kiss the cup. I had to. I'm going to say to date here, unless I ever meet someone with a pretty face that I come serious with, this has been the most prettiest thing I've kissed in my life here. Now I've been around for 38 years, so what do you think of this? Do we have what it takes to win the Stanley Cup here? We would need to win 19 games to bring it home, because the playing round would be a best of 5, so you need to win 3, and then there's 4 rounds to get to this guy here to win it and hoist it here. So it would definitely be one heck of a run, but NHL 20 seems to like us to win it this year. So what do you think? So if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders here, home of the 1989 Stanley Cup champions, debated to be 2004. And according to the simulations, 2020, I can dream. I always keep saying that, I can dream that we'll be doing this. But, it is what it is. Everything's not played on paper or electronic here, but it's fun to dream here. I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and also share my experiences, let's say I'm on the road or at a sporting event here, or who knows, maybe future Stanley Cup celebration rallies when we're allowed to gather and do all that stuff here. I mean, there's been other gatherings that has happened for other reasons, and I will wear a mask at least if we're allowed to, but we'll see. It's still months away, but that's all I do on my YouTube channel. I also have my other social media links down in the description below here. So I say here, go Flames go. Go bring on the Stanley Cup Playoffs, hopefully as soon as possible here. And we all dream as fans that our team will be doing this, hoisting it, and, kissing it and passing it on to our teammates. And we as fans get to go to rallies and, see this thing. And, it'd definitely be nice if it actually happened this year or anytime soon in my lifetime. As I'm at the age now where I would appreciate this a lot more than we did bring it home, but it is what it is at the time here. But as I say here, go Flames go. Stanley Cup, most impressive championship trophy in sports, and no simulation said that we'll win it this year. So as I say, I'll see you in the next video here.